During these crazy days and times, have you ever thought of how or why should I reinvent myself? Reinventing yourself today, right now on Air Brands Podcast.
It's on Air Brands Live at Home with Devin Bravaco, Eric Cabral, Josh Terry, Jordan Fraser, and Justin Fraser. Lisa Holbert, Sarah McMillan, Chris Orsi, Jack Turkel, and Jake Resnicki.
What's happening, folks?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the On Air Brands Live podcast. As usual, we are your most humbled and happy hosts. Of course, I have with me Lisa. Welcome to the show, Josh and Devin. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. I'm excited about today. September, it's a new month. It's the last 4 months of the year.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
I just wanted to, so obviously we're going to talk about reinventing yourself, especially during these times, and how you could eventually figure things out and pivot and create something fresh and new and what the heck that means. And we have an expert to speak about that whole concept and that whole idea.
Look at the book.
But I want to address the elephant in the room that we didn't get to talk about in our morning meeting, but we had a 3.1 earthquake this morning. I normally don't like to talk about weather, but it was weird. Anyway, here in New Jersey, we had a 3.1 earthquake. Just wanted to share that. For all you West Coast people, you know, you're not the only ones.
Our guests are supposed to have those, not us in New Jersey.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was,
Speaking
it was
of,
quite crazy. Two in the morning, 2:00 in the morning.
Did anybody feel it? Is the question.
Yes.
I had no idea that it even happened.
Really?
Yeah.
And
We were
I'm
woken up.
the one that's like on top of this stuff. Had no idea.
Can we also address Devin's studio here? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks. It's all just I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm anything. So I'm just going to continue to speak to you and keep my hands to my side.
Don't touch anything.
Always better to look good than to feel good, right? So you look good, girlfriend.
Here's the thing. You've been doing it longer than him, so you tell him. You're the pro.
Well, he's listening, so you let him know. All I know is I'm only allowed drinks on the left-hand side and not the right-hand side. And I don't know. Music's coming out from different places. I don't know what's going on, but I'm here.
Dangerous.
But here's the thing I just want to bring up for those watching right now. So Devin is in this new hot seat in her home there. She's got a brand new mic, or a different mic. She's got new Beats, by the way, headphones, and she's got lighting in this environment. And I know you've had a microphone, you've had a headphones, and you've had lighting before, but now putting yourself in this position, there's just the combination works so well. I don't know what the lesson there is, but you're looking the part, you're playing the part. I hope go solo shot. Yeah.
Make me blush. Yeah. I know. I appreciate it. I mean, it's all Justin. It's really not me, but excited to have been a part of his journey and help him get to where he is.
Here's a really cool idea, by the way. Yeah. So this reminds me of playing as children, right? When we used to grab the hairbrush and we used to pretend and stand on the bed like it was a stage, and I would grab a tennis racket and I would pretend it was a guitar, right? That was a cool thing. And this is sort of like, you know, we're children pretending like, oh, I'm this personality on radio, right? I'm this person that, you know, can make, you know, sounds and add music and inspire people through my stories. And it reminds me of an excerpt in a chapter in Kathy's book, who is our guest today, Kathy Sharp Ross.
Yes, she is
the amazing author of Reinvent Yourself, where she does talk about how we can tap into those dreams in order to inspire ourselves, to do something as adults. So, with that being said, Jake, let's bring on our guest of honor, because I really think that she can speak to this better than I, obviously. But it really inspired me when I read that, and I was like, that is so true. Like, when we're able to tap into our inner child to inspire us, right, to do bigger things. Kathy, welcome to the show. We're so honored to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Did I do any justice to what you?
You did so much. I'm ready to sit here and just listen. Lisa's holding up the book. I mean, I'll just check in once in a while, but you guys have got this.
Allow me to connect one more dot. Last month, Kathy Sharp-Ross was, in fact, for those playing along at home and keeping score, she was our keynote last PodMax event, interviewed by our man Larry Roberts. So good to have you back in this.
Great.
Yeah, was it good for you?
Was he so good for me. He's so good.
We love Larry.
And that voice, I feel like I need to do a show just so that I can hire him for his voice. He's got the voice.
Yeah, he told me that you guys have become fast friends. You guys are hanging out, having meetings. How cool is that?
I think the fact that we're all on Zoom and video these days, it's actually creating a lot more connections than we might have already had. And I live on an airplane, and I'm usually in New York, so I would have been like, hey, let's meet. I'll be in town for coffee in a week from now.
That's awesome.
I'm there usually every month. And so it's just great people, all of you. I mean, really connecting with you. I feel like I'm like, hi guys, I'm here. I'm back. I'm getting to see my friends again. I love it.
I know. There's no more barriers, right? You just turn it on and here we are. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, can you expand a little bit about that story and what can inspire people during these times, especially they wake up in the morning. It's hard. It's difficult. I'll admit it, to get up and be motivated, to just like tackle the day. So,
well, I think there's layers of that, but within the context of kind of what we've all been going through over the last 7 months, it's really important that we start tuning in and listening a little more to ourselves. And I'd like to think that we've been handed a gift of time, especially if you go back 3-4 months when we were really all hunkered down at home. We felt that we didn't really have a choice but to figure out how we were going to be spending time, what we could and could not be doing with our time. So time is such a precious commodity in our lives. And we were sort of handed this gift of, you don't need to commute. You can't go out for cocktails after work every day and meet people. You can't be making plans for the weekend so that you suddenly go, well, yeah, I'd love to sit and read a book, but I don't have an hour to do that. All the little things that we would love to take time out to do, but we're so busy planning our lives and scheduling our lives that we end up with no time to ourselves. So I'm a huge proponent of always, COVID, no COVID, whatever we're going through, always making time for ourselves, scheduling it if you have to, but also learning how to listen to yourself. So when I take a walk, traditionally, I do listen to podcasts and I listen to audiobooks, or I'll talk to a friend on the phone. And I'm a big multitasker. And I think if we can consolidate things like that, it's really efficient. But what we're not doing in that 30-minute walk that we're taking is we're not allowing ourselves to just be. And I was once told many, many years ago by a psychic that I should make myself a cup of tea and go sit in the backyard and stare at a tree. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, okay, sure. I'm going to do that. The busiest person, I'm running a global business, a family, and you want me to go sit and stare at a tree. And I just thought that's insanity. And I didn't do it. And I didn't do it for a very long time, but it was gnawing away at me. I was like, there was a reason she told me to do that. And I realized that sometimes I would purposely sit in my office, hold that cup of coffee, not a tea, and stare out a window, like thinking I was doing the exercise. I'm like, okay, this is my version of staring at a tree. I'm going to stare out a window for 2 minutes, right? And not be on a phone and not be doing work. And what I started to realize was the meditative quality of that. And I do meditate, so I get it. And I understand the value of that. But this is the awake version of being very cognizant of what you are doing in a different way. And, really all that comes back to is the fact that we're never really with ourselves. We need to learn how to be still, how to listen to ourselves, and really sort of connect and reconnect with who we are, what we love, what our passions are. So when you take the gift of the time that we've got or we've been given or that we need to create, and we start to really just go a little more inward and reflect on who we are and what we're doing and where we're at. I mean, you look at your values in life, maybe hold that up to the way you're actually spending time. It's one of the power tools in the book that I talk about. It gives us a chance to sort of start to really make sense of that. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to figure out what my passion is and what I want to do with my time. And that is what starts to enable you to tune in to yourself. Yeah. And, one of the chapters is called Hello, Are You Still in There? And it's one of my favorites.
Can I connect the dots for something you said a few moments ago? Yeah, the fact that we laughed about the fact that a psychic told you to stare at a tree. But I want to dig into that for just a moment, because I think that there are two types of people in this world: those who go to psychics and those who do not go to psychics.
Oh, right.
So
I know
you found yourself.
It was a bold statement to share that, but
I love it.
It was like a little birdie told me.
Right. So I found the I found the dichotomy here interesting, because you were in front of a psychic, but then you were like, I don't like what she's telling me. So are you one that sometimes or that one time decided to go to a psychic? What was that story about?
We could do a whole show on
Let's
that.
Let's do it.
Really? Okay.
Let's do it.
So I grew up in a household. My mother was teaching yoga when I was 3 years old. Okay. So I grew up very spiritually aware, let's say. Mm-hmm. She had an symbol, like her cool piece of jewelry was this awesome gold symbol that she wore around my neck my whole life. My father was the entrepreneur and my mother was the spiritual guru, and they had me, and look what happened. So I have this incredible combination of the two of them, having run a business for 32 years, very entrepreneurial, but that's spiritual sensibility. So yes, I love psychics. I love their insights. And this was one of my regular visits, once or twice a year. So the thing from that, just the information that came from that for me was, and I take everything with a grain of salt. It's sort of like, I have friends and I have business gurus and I have mentors and I have my own sense of self and my husband, and, everything kind of like weighs in from my perspective. And so that's one of the many. I will say that she has been spot on in everything she has ever said to me in my life. And I don't use it as a directive and a roadmap for, she said this, so I'm going to do that. But she recognizes, and I think most good psychics do this, they recognize what's already in our sphere and what's already going on a little bit before we see it. And I could share some insane examples of that, but I will say that I've never looked back and said, she said this and that didn't happen, or that was so off base. Literally everything. And it's pretty interesting. I guess we could do a whole show. Maybe we'll bring her on one day and do a show with her.
That'd be great too.
I always see it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whenever you hear something, or anyone, psychic or not, put an idea out there that aligns with something that you're thinking or you believe in, you basically manifest it, right? You make it happen.
100%. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that, because there really is a lot of value. I mean, our thoughts become our words, and our words become our beliefs, and our beliefs become our actions. And therefore, we really do. It is the power to create that. I mean, how often have you manifested something just because you thought, gee, that's something I want to do or should do? And frankly, that plays a big part in this. And there are, some really interesting points that we make in the book that I make about that. So yeah, Eric, I think it's super important to be aware of what, careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Yeah, it can even work in your favor the other way. If someone says something that you don't want to happen, like they say, you're going to be this or that, and you're like, I don't want that to be my reality.
Right.
Then you can do everything in your power to
shift it.
to
Yeah,
shift.
yeah, shift
to
it.
go the other way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
So
we
it's
have a
good
lot of
stuff.
power over that.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things, and talk about shifting a little bit. One of the things I think was also fascinating is going into this whole pandemic, you decided, I guess coincidentally, to release your book.
I wish I had that much control.
Right.
I mean, yes,
It was
I
scheduled
had
to be released, right? And
exactly.
the world went upside down. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about how that kind of played out for you.
Yeah.
And
So
did the psychic tell you that was going to
I was
happen?
going to say, I wish I had checked in with her on that. And I haven't even spoken to her since this. I just want to call her up and sort of say, so did you see this pandemic coming?
Why didn't
could
you
you
warn
not
me?
have given me, right? Could you not have given me the little warning sign, something?
I would have listened to you this time.
Exactly.
Right. But yes, so independently published the book. March 7th was the release date. I had
really?
a
Wow.
launch event scheduled
Yeah.
March 27th in LA with about 200 plus people. I had one scheduled in New York, April 15th.
Oh no.
Another several events in New York and San Francisco, and on and on and on. I'm a marketer. This is what I do for a living. I think I wrote the marketing plan for this book before I even released wrote page one. So you talk about messing with me. March 7th, and I saw this starting to come at us already, and didn't realize, as none of us did, how serious this was. I postponed my event, thinking I was postponing it a few weeks, maybe a month. I literally had to reinvent the entire book plan and the book launch plan. And it was, I will say, I'm fortunate in that this is what I do for a living. I live and die by crises and pivoting and creativity in business. This is what we do for our clients every day. And while I was on parallel paths dealing with that with all of our clients, and what do you do and how do you take an event, and that was happening June 2nd and turn it into virtual and global, events with clients and all kinds of things. So we had to sort of become another one of those files on the desk, if you will. And I've got an extraordinary team. So it was like, okay, what are we going to do? And one of the things that I did first and foremost was obviously lean into social media in a big way around the launch. Lean into the content. I'd been amassing a newsletter, email list for years because I'd been creating and working on the content in many ways over the last 10 years. And blogs on Thrive Global and HuffPost, and sort of had a community already. And then I turned to the computer and I said, I'm going to do a virtual book party and virtual chats, and created what is now the Reinvention Virtual Chat Series. 2 times a week. Originally it was 3 times. It included a Saturday. And then I realized after, about 2 months that people were over being on their computer on a Saturday, and scaled it back to 2 days a week. So every Tuesday and Thursday at 2:30 PST, 5:30 EST, we do the virtual chat. I have guests on. So I've sort of created what is this incredible opportunity to share. I have fabulous guests on. I have 30 people that are featured in the book, and hundreds of others that I have in line to interview. So I bring on a combination of different guests. And we talk about these great reinvention stories. And one of the big pieces of my book is that it's really about, if people can identify what other people have done in this space and they can relate to it, it's a lot easier than someone just telling you how to do it, right? So that was always for me the premise of the book, that if you can do it, if he can do it or she can do it, you can do it. And to make it relatable. So on that note, I decided not to go for the Bill Gates and the Richard Bransons of the world, the unattainable, gee, I'll never be like that type people. I sort of brought it down a notch to some extraordinary CEOs, executives, Olympians. Yeah, they're sort of amazing as well. But just enough of a combination of men and women from all walks of life, some housewife turned artist, Wolf of Wall Street type personality that is now a school teacher in New York that, maybe can't rub 2 nickels together, but is living an extraordinary life on his terms. And our dear friend James Orsini, who, as you all know, is a dear business colleague of mine and a dear friend and a friend of all of yours, and is the reason I'm here and connected to all of you. So thank you, James, if you're listening. But really being able to tell people stories from their perspective. And when you can do that and people can relate to that, it really helps you realize that you're entitled to be living the life that you want to be living. That with the right tools and the right roadmap, I call it the reinvention roadmap, and a belief that perhaps that change is adventure. It doesn't have to be fear. Some of these are the cornerstones of reinventing. Reinventions come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, it could be a 5-minute reinvention. It could be something as simple as I've been, meaning to do that vegetable garden in the backyard, or build that shed, or get back on a bike, or pick up that guitar since I was 15, haven't picked it up. Or it could be something really big, life-changing, spiritual, hobbies, career, relationships. I mean, there's a lot of parts to all of us.
On that note, with the word reinvention, can you give us a little overview when we're using it specifically, just so the person tuning in, let's say the entrepreneur who's in business, trying to grow, trying to master their world, like you said, in business, in health, in finance, in relationships, in spirituality, in anything that is meaningful to the person. What is reinvention really, and what isn't it?
Reinvention, I interpret reinvention as the evolution of your life. I think reinventions come from both adversity, where there are challenges in your world. They also come from aha moments. When you recognize, from my personal perspective, for me, it's like, wow, my life is awesome. What else can I be doing? How else can I grow? How else can I add layers to my life and do more and create more and be more? For others, it's adversity. It's the question of, how do I get out of a situation that I'm in that I'm not really happy with? And I think we've got to be careful that we don't blow up the lives of people around us when we make these decisions. I think that's super important. It's sort of number one. Make sure that everybody around you is either on board, in check. You're not going to leave collateral damage. I think one of the greatest examples is what we call, these midlife crises. And you don't have to be that age or going through a midlife crisis to reinvent your life. It's starting earlier and earlier now, because people live a very intense full life by the age of 25 and 30 these days because of the way we all live. And when I started writing the book 10 years ago, it was like a 40-year-old barrier. And I brought it down as the years went by, because I realized that a 30-year-old is so prime and ready for a reinvention, because they've been living a 24/7 intense life. But it's really important that we recognize that we can pivot, and that we do have the right and the entitlement to live this life that we really want. And I think that's super important. So if you're, at that midlife crisis point, and I'd say there's a chapter again, it's called It's Not a Midlife Crisis, It's a Cry for Reinvention. And you don't have to blow up the lives of those around you in order to create layers of what you want in your life. I've got an amazing story about a gentleman who picked up the violin, never had played in his life, was always curious, full-time job, met under really fun circumstances, getting on a plane, going to the licensing show. And he had this long guitar case. And I said, what's in the case? What are you taking with you to the licensing show? I thought that it was like some cool new toy, because he worked at Mattel. And he says, it's my violin. I said, your violin? I said, what are you doing taking your violin to the licensing show? He says, well, I decided a year ago that I wanted to learn how to play the violin. I went on eBay, bought a violin, went on YouTube, taught myself how to play, and I take it everywhere I go with me. And at lunchtime every day at work, I go to the park across the street and I practice. And I just thought, that's my guy. That right there defines reinvention. He's not blowing up his life and his world and doing crazy, but he's nurturing his soul. And I think if we can allow ourselves to feel that sense of entitlement, nurture our souls, and do anything that steps out of the norm of our life, be it, as I said, a 5-minute reinvention, taking on a new hobby, creating some new spiritual path. Maybe it's a huge career change. Maybe it's a relationship change. That to me is how we define reinvention. And if you look at the inside, the first page of my book, if I may, I have a definition here, which is it's the action or process through which something is changed so much that it appears to be entirely new.
Mm.
And so there you go. Exactly. So that is a definition. It is for me sort of really the definition. It's not abandoning everything in your life. It's adding layers to it. And that's how I really live my life. It's like, what else is out there? I'm curious. I'm a seeker. I love people's stories. And I think that everybody's got some version of that in them.
I have a question because it's staring me in the face as you're explaining the brand, and as a brand builder and a marketer, when you were writing and designing this book and also this brand Reinvent Yourself, were you considering the 10,000 baby boomers that are retiring every day? Were you really thinking about like this is a siren to that demographic, or were you thinking about millennials, anyone, come all Gen X? Because this really, I imagine, is going to speak volumes to those who are retiring every day and trying to figure out what's next. What's the next chapter in my life?
Yeah. Baby boomers, I mean, there is no question. And I think that the older sort of generation now is much younger than they used to be. So they really are looking for what the next chapter is in their life. They're not looking for what's my retirement plan. They're actually looking for, how do I fill my life with things I've been passionate about? And I think the baby boomers, for the most part, grew up on this: get out of college, go get a job, collect the pocket watch, all of these sort of traditional markers that were more a part of that lifestyle than they are today. That's for certain. And so they missed out on the curiosity seeking, the wanderlust of life, the entitlement. We all live in, we're bringing up our children to say, how do you feel, darling? You're asking your 6-year-old how they feel instead of saying, here, go do that. And so I think this is an incredible call to action for that generation, and to sort of give them the permission to say, hey, you've got a blank book now in front of you. What else do you want to do with it? And that's a pretty special thing. Sorry,
I
Deb.
love that. And so obviously millennial here who have, seen and heard like growing up, like you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to get a job, you're supposed to pay off your debt, move out, like get married. Like it's like that book that somebody wrote that I still don't understand who wrote the book of life of what you're supposed to do. Right. I still don't understand where it comes from. But no, I think like now, being in my early 30s, it's more I've changed my life, and I feel like I've been through so much in my life that a lot of people like haven't experienced in different ways. And so I feel like, recently I've done something for myself and tried to go back to like my 75 hard that I keep talking about. It. I'm on day 40 today, but like it's more so about like for me, it's a mindset, and it's for taking the time for myself. And like even though like on hard days, it's really just about like yesterday. It sounds silly, but like I did yoga, and then I literally laid on my gazebo floor yesterday on my yoga mat for a good 30-40 minutes by myself and meditated, and was like the happiest person I've been. And reading books and stuff, like I feel like I've been more observing versus like like talking and kind of trying to share. Like I feel like I've tried to explain to so many people like who I am, what I believe in, what I need in a relationship, what I need in my own personal life. And I think now I'm just more taking it in and observing like what is around me. I've read a lot of books over this time. A big thing is like reading books, but it's more so about reading books that are going to like, make my mind like open, see like different things that are around me, and not be so focused on like the smaller things that like once like upset me. And now it's more like I just finished reading like the 5 love languages. And I think that in a way is like reinventing your relationship. Yeah. And it's important to me, like you're always constantly inventing, and it's making sure that like your needs are getting met. And like I'm not the same as my fiance. I don't need the same things that he needs. And so it's more so to be able to like explain that and reinvent like your relationship, reinvent your mind, reinvent like
Right.
everything around you. And just like for me, it's been such like a yeah, there's like that physical aspect of like what I'm doing, but a lot of it is really just like the mind and taking time for myself.
I
And
love
it
that.
really
And
is.
and you're right. I mean, it's so important. And like you said, it's like when you do that, you do affect the relationship.
Yeah.
You bring a better self, a better you to the relationship. I constantly talk about, the expression of put your oxygen mask on first. God, I haven't heard that in a long time, but
It's
makes me
true.
sad. I can't wait to hear those words from a pilot.
Yeah.
But I'll be that pilot for now and say, put your oxygen mask on first. When you do that, when you take care of yourself and you feel more complete, more whole, more in control of what it is that you want, and you're not a victim of the circumstances we're living in or the situation that is going on and whatever that is in your life, that's when you feel empowered and you start to attract towards you the things that you really do want in your life, and you will be a better partner and a better parent and a better person and all of that, a better colleague. So it's really important. I love hearing that you're doing. We'll have to talk about reading lists and what you're
Yeah,
reading
yeah,
and
please,
and
I
what
would
have
love
you.
yeah, no, it's definitely it's been like eye-opening, and I think like to that point, it's more so like, I feel like I've, I mean, even as a team, like we've had this conversation before, like, yeah, I come off as one way, but like really like this is what I need. And so it's more so like I've tried to communicate like what I need before. And so it's like, all right, let's, figure it out. Like how can we get there? But at the same time, like, I'm just kind of observing at this point
Yeah,
and appreciating the ride, and I feel like I'm kind of taking a step back in a way, and so
that's
in that
amazing.
way, it's more so, like, reinventing myself and trying to find, like, my inner self and my inner soul, what really I
Right,
need.
what really connects. And I'll tell you what else is interesting. Another phase where people are sort of going through this, and Lisa, you can relate to this, is the empty nesting.
Mhm.
Right.
When, the kids suddenly leave home, and I've had, how many of us have cried or had someone cry on our shoulder and just go, my
Just
God,
a
like,
little
what
bit.
is my purpose? And the kids are leaving home, and I'm never going to make a school lunch again, and they're not going to need me. And, we'll all find out soon enough that is not true. But in the moment, and I address this as well in the book, and I talk about the fact that this is your chance to do all the things that for 20-ish years you've been going, oh, I don't have the time for that. Oh, I was going to plant a garden. I don't have time for that. I was going to take on this hobby. I was going to, go down this road and create a new business. I don't have the time for that. Well, guess what? Not only do you have the time, but you will also set an extraordinary example for your kids to see what is possible in life. That it's not like, okay, I had a career, I raised my children, they're gone, and now I'll just wait to die. Like, it's not about that. Now it's like, yeehaw, the kids are gone. Let's pull out the martinis, and what are we going to do? Life
Exactly.
begins all over again.
Hmm.
And it is the opportunity, if we really look at the time that we capture, and sure, the kids have been kind of out of the house anyway for the last several years, right? But they were still there, and they were still tethered, and it was like, who's home for dinner, who's not, you were still kind of connecting on that level. So now you get to kind of go back to pre-kid version of yourself and sort of say, well, what were those dreams? What were those fantasies? And at some point, you're either doing it around the sort of pre-kid phase, or you're doing it again, going back to, hello, are you still in there? What did you want to be when you were 5 years old and 12 years old? Did you want to be a rock star? And you may not be a rock star, but pull out a guitar and buy a guitar on eBay like Scott did, and just make it happen. Talk to your buddies, create a garage band, and you'll all be happier going to work on Monday. So there are so many little ways to just tweak something that might be going on in your world. And if you love your career and your job, what are the other parts of your life? And if you love all the other parts of your life and that job thing isn't working, maybe it's time to start thinking about where to use the passion you have to find a career in that space. If it's music and you're not going to be a rock star, obviously, can you get a job in marketing? Can you do something in research? But be immersed in a category of business that you're actually interested in.
You used the word earlier, and this ties in the word explore. And I think that's a great word for this whole mindset of reinvention. My favorite chapter, and it just so happens that it's the chapter that James is in, and it's also the chapter of empty nesting,
Yeah.
which is chapter 14, has a quote by Lucille Ball, who I think is hysterical.
Yes.
And it says, "I'd rather regret the things I've done than regret the things I haven't." And I think that's very powerful because that's about exploring. Go try something, whatever it is. It might be a failure, but will have learned something from it, and you will have grown.
Well, and I wouldn't call that a failure. Like growing and evolving and discovering that that's not what you thought it was going to be is not a failure, right? So it's again goes back to, how do you define failure? How do you define success? For me, success used to be defined by making sure I was at the dinner table if I was in town with my children at least 4 or 5 nights a week. Like, no matter how busy I was, where I needed to be, what meetings or cocktails had to happen after work, that to me was success. If I could check in with every client on that day, that was success. And I think when we look at our quote failures, we got to really kind of pick them apart a little and kind of go, wait a minute. I may have thought that's what was going to happen. I may have thought that's what I wanted. It didn't quite go as planned. I learned X, Y, and Z from this. I pivoted. I shifted. I've now come to a new place in what I think I need to do. That is success. And that is discovery. And I think, this whole issue of risk reward, of course, if we don't take those little risks, we're never going to experience those rewards. But if we can reframe the fear and the failure and start to understand as the natural evolution or reinvention of our lives is discovery and exploration, and discovery of, I thought I wanted that and that wasn't. And I have an incredible story in here as well that is a friend of mine who was one of these super power agents in Hollywood. I mean, crazy, amazing woman. Phone burning off the hook 24/7, you name it. It was everything you see in a Hollywood movie. And she sort of got a little burned out. She had an epiphany. It was time to leave this company. And she kind of had one of these, what I call a back pocket reinvention. She had this idea for something she wanted to do. It was to create a blow dry bar. And that was kind of when those blow dry bars just started becoming the hip thing. And it was in a very fancy part of town here in LA. And she sort of had this idea to do it. So she went online, she was researching, all that she needed to do, super bright, super connected, but kind of was like, I'm going to figure this out. I need to get contracts. I need partners. I need to invest in real estate for this property. Figured it all out in her pajamas at 11 o'clock at night, on Google, however she had to. Got into the business, was hugely successful, was getting text messages from her clients saying, oh, I love my hair. It looks fabulous. After a year of that, she wanted to shoot herself in the head. She was like, this is just not happening at the pace I need in my life. And she actually went back into the business, but created her own agency, which was the second time having her own agency. But instead of working for this huge company that everybody would know, she now went back into the business, but creating her own company version of that. And it was a huge lesson. She kind of made this big U-turn. And that is not failure. That is such massive success. That is the ability to fulfill a dream, recognize it, been there, done that, check the box. Wasn't what she didn't feel the way she thought she would feel after a while. And said, you know what? I miss what I was doing. It's sort of the grass is always greener kind of thing. We always think we want something, but she went for it. She learned a lot, and now she's doing exactly what she wants to be doing. And the incarnation of what she's doing now is the best version of what she's ever done in her life. And she would not have arrived there had she not taken that road to get there.
So
I
good.
love that. And I think Eric and I actually have talked a lot about like define success. Like, what is success to you? Because I think for me, like, I thought success was one thing before. And then now, kind of growing up, starting our own business, doing things in a different way, success to me looks different. And so, like, I used to be like so focused, like I'll never forget my dad. I mean, my dad still to this day, I love him to death. But like every time like I would get a job, okay, what are you making? What is like your benefits? What is like it was all like money, money, money. And so like I grew up thinking like success is money. And
Right.
now I'm like, no, like success to me is like happiness. Like I am so much more happy who I am today in my
Mhm.
own like in the shoes that I walk in, like everything, like I'm so much more happier. And so I mean, Eric and I have had several conversations about this, like define success, like what does that really mean to you?
Yeah.
And like, why do you think it's that?
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Because
it's
it has some, there's some reason
well,
why.
we attach different things to it.
Mhm.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think it's okay for money to be a value of success. It is. It's great because it
Yeah,
also gives us a lot of freedom,
of course.
but if you can recognize and understand its place
Yes.
and what you value and live that concurrently, that's pretty special. And most people don't usually discover that till a little later in life for all the reasons you just explained.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got kids that are 21 and 24, and I'm like, okay, where's the job? How, you do,
I
especially
know.
when they keep coming to you saying, will you pay for this? And will you buy that? And, you're trying to teach them the value of a dollar.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, look, it's a society we live in. And I think, again, in the last 7 months, we've learned a lot
Yes.
about what we value. I mean, come on, I think we can all say that we've probably worn the same 20 pieces of clothing in the last 7 months, right?
Several more pairs
In my
than
life,
Assuming they still fit.
yeah.
right? Exactly. Well, shoes are good, but I got to tell you, I live in high heels. And I actually just put out a blog that I had originally done about 5 years ago. And I did the updated version of it because I realized about 5 or 6 weeks into this that I had not put on a pair of high heels. And anybody that knows me, I'm 5'4", I'm not tall. And I always have heels on. And unless they see me on the tennis court in tennis shoes, like they still all think I'm a little bit taller. And I realized I'd either been barefoot in tennis shoes or in, flip-flops basically for at this point 6 months. And I put out another blog about this, and it's really interesting. I was like, God, I haven't even bought a pair of shoes in 6 months. So, I think we realize that we've lived on smaller budgets in the last 7 months, whether we've been forced to because of what we've had to deal with jobs and work, or whether we're clearly not out spending money the way we were on all the things that we do. But it does make you reevaluate also your connection to everything that is material and who we are. And I think we have had a world full of people that have become a little more introspective, a little more grateful, a little more appreciative of how to use time and how to listen and tune into ourselves a little bit more. And, frankly, and to Lisa's point at the beginning of the show, I did not intend for this book to come out in March after 10 years of like the epiphany of the idea and developing all this great content and blogs and doing speaking engagements and interviews over the last 10 years around this content. You'd have to be crazy to say, hey, I'll launch my book at the beginning of a pandemic so that it really messes up my plans. Ironically, it is the 11 o'clock news. It is the conversation that everybody is having about reinventing and pivoting and, bringing reinvention into the world of business. We're having a lot of very intensive conversations with clients and other brands and companies about reinventing your business, which is what everybody's being forced to do as well. And so I am blessed in that this is an important topic right now, and then I get to share philosophies and thoughts and open people's minds up to the positive nature of what they're going through and how to move through these times. And these are tools that they're applicable to all parts of your life, some more to others than different parts of your life. But it's a really interesting time. And I think you find that we're all having these conversations. There's very few people that you're not having some version of this conversation with.
You actually couldn't have timed it better, Kathy,
I
because I
know.
mean, you have to appreciate the irony of reinvent yourself, right? And then during a time when everyone has to, we have no choice but to reinvent ourselves. And I just wanted to add, because I know you'll appreciate this, but everyone here knows my story, that I was in corporate America for 20 plus years. And I decided, the risk reward was worth it and left, right? That comfortable,
Wow.
high paying, 6-figure above job to become a real estate investor. I had no idea what real estate investing was about, but I wanted to highlight the importance of reinventing yourself. The step prior to that is recoding your mind and your mindset, because I couldn't make that change or that leap without reprogramming everything, like Devin had mentioned. Our family, our uncles, our aunts, our parents, everyone telling us you have to live this way. And to recode my mind, upgrade my operating system so that I can move forward. But it was baby steps. It was incremental. It took over a year for me to finally, I'm an investor, I'm an investor, I'm an investor. And then I pivoted and reinvented myself again, and then opened up On Air Brands, the media agency, because what I created as an investing firm resulted in a network, a massive network of investors that all needed creative. They all said, I need marketing, I need branding. Can you do it? And I was like, well, the planets are all aligned. I have no choice but to do it. And it felt like it was my duty. This was my best way to serve and to help more people. So then I put it aside. It was really a tough choice. Do I continue buying multifamily houses, or do I build this, which is now Podmax and all this stuff? Constant reinvention.
But look at, if you hadn't taken that leap, you would not be doing this. And sometimes that is just the beauty. And sometimes we have to give it up a little. I think we all try to control everything. Sometimes we've got to get a little uncomfortable, a little more comfortable being uncomfortable, and trusting in ourselves. And, going back to the psychic, I will tell you that is one of the things that I probably have learned more than anything in those conversations, was in trusting in what we know and listening to that voice, because it is actually what a psychic picks up on is what we already know, just so you're aware of that. So we have to learn to trust more, because all they're doing is mirroring it back to us most of the time.
Yeah, it's almost like giving you permission, right? When there's somebody that you respect and love says something to you, and you're finally, it's like, I knew the answer all along.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right? Thank you, but I already thank you.
But I needed someone to validate me, and that's okay. I mean, we're human. We do that. But I love what you said about recoding, because that is the process, and you've got to allow yourself to sort of go through certain exercises to recognize. And what's really important in there is the why. The why is usually what will pull you through. Why do you want this change? Why do you want to leave that job? Why do you want to create something new? Why do you want to redefine what success means to you? The why is usually what keeps the stake in the ground, keeps you focused on your mission, reminds you when you're up at 2 a.m, having a sleepless night, going, what am I doing? Am I out of my mind? How am I going to pay the mortgage or take care of the bills, or whatever it may be that you're suddenly shifting in? The why is everything. The why is your compass. And if you can remember that, especially when we're talking about creating a reinvention roadmap, which is all the steps that it takes to kind of go through that process of recoding, as you call it, the why is what's going to keep you grounded in all of that.
Kathy, I think a lot of people, obviously, especially companies during these past 6 months, obviously had to reinvent themselves. And I kind of want to just like Eric and Josh, like in this part, but because we basically reinvented Podmax completely. Like Podmax was a live event, and I came onto the team in February, right like before all of this kind of hit the fan, and I'm like, hey guys, this is great. I saw like their first live event. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then the pandemic happens, and we're kind of all just like staring at each other. And so in a way, like I think what we were able to pivot and create is almost more beneficial than like a live person, because like you have like Josh, and obviously Kathy, you were a part of it, and I'm grateful for your speaking slot, but then also grateful that you just came in and you were in the networking group and you were just like an observer throughout the day. And I think that is huge. And so, like obviously, like Josh coming from the acting world, able to pull that out of people and like have people like be vulnerable, create a space that everyone feels comfortable in, that can tell their story, that can talk about who they are, what they're reinventing in their own lives. And then, both Eric and Josh and the team for being able to give that platform for everyone to have those conversations. I just think it's so huge, especially in the world that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
And it's just so powerful to see, the conversations that happen after the event also. Like we've had people reach out to us being like, I've had such breakthroughs from this event, or, there's like, so many comments that people have reached out to us for just saying how instrumental this event has been to them and in their journey. And so,
well, I think it's amazing how in these conversations you all open up and you're all very vulnerable and you share and you really talk from the heart. You're very authentic in recognizing the parts of yourselves and everybody out there. And this is why when I said earlier, when I interviewed people, I wanted real people in my book. I wanted people that people could relate to, because at the end of the day, when you see a friend or someone do something and you can kind of relate and go, well, she has no superpower except for believing that she needs to do this. That's the superpower. Yeah. Well, gosh, I could do that too. So it becomes more realistic when we have this kind of dialogue and we're putting all these nuggets of information and ideas and planting seeds. And I think for some people, just the permission, that what I call entitlement, to know that you are entitled. You are the center of your world. So no matter who's in it, what your responsibilities are, what you're doing, you are entitled to live the life that you want. This is your life. So figure it out. Make a plan. It may take 10 years to get there, but you'll wake up like I did and suddenly go, hey, I've got a book in my hand. How did that happen? Well, it didn't just happen.
Yeah.
It was 10 years of thinking, touching, researching, interviewing, anguish, whatever it was. But then you wake up with that dream in your hand. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is really important, that we allow ourselves that and then figure it out. Put that roadmap together. Figure out how you're going to incorporate it into your life.
I wanted to rewind to some statements made earlier, which, was going to dovetail into a question I have for you, Kathy, where people are often thinking about, this comes from a deep-rooted place when you're taking care of everyone around you and you're constantly making sure everyone's protected, everyone's comfortable, and Devin brought this up, in our team meeting. She's like, this is what I need. This is what I need to get us forward. This is what I need to make it better. It's not about her. Yes, in that moment, she's asking for something that she needs, but it's about the greater picture. It's about the bigger picture. It's the whole. So even if you take that concept into the family, whereas my wife, God bless her soul, she's always, not her soul, but she's alive. But she's.
Oh my goodness!
It sounded weird. It sounded so weird when I said. I was like, wait a second.
God bless her.
Yeah, God bless her. But soul, right? When you say soul, that means they're not around. But anyway, she
exclusively
she trusted in the process and trusted in me and my passion.
Yeah.
And if she understood. She didn't see it play out, but understood that if I become better, which I always call, Eric 2.0 now, moving into 3.0, that if I am better, it makes all of this better. It makes the family better. It makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father. It makes Devin being better, makes On Air Brands and Podmax a better unit, a better company. And she understands that. And I think that when people accept the idea and explain it, hopefully their loved ones will understand. I am doing this for myself, and yes, it may seem selfish, and I'm putting the oxygen mask on, but this is for us. This is for everything we're doing and everything we're building together. As long as, like you said, Kathy, as long as you're not hurting people along the way.
Well, that's it.
Right.
It's so important that it's almost like the disclaimer at the front of the book. It's like, I don't want anybody to call me saying, you said I could do this and I blew up my life. Well, I'm saying it loud and clear. You make sure that everybody that needs to be on board is on board, right. Or they're supportive, or they're going to sit quietly and not get in your way, or that there won't be collateral damage. I mean, look, the days of affairs and red Porsches. I mean, come on. That's like the most antiquated cliche. But people are doing different versions of that when they need to kind of step over something to get to what they want. And I think that there's a lot of more eloquent ways to get there and to figure it out without having that kind of impact on people. It's really important.
Well, I think
yeah, go ahead, Dev. I just have a question.
I think that, I was going to say, I think your wife is honestly the sweetest person ever. I met her once, in person, and I just was like, I want to hug you. And it's in the middle of a pandemic. I don't, you're very sweet. But I think it's really, it's about the relationship, and any relationship, our relationship with a team, your relationship with your wife. It's more so about, supporting what is going on, but making sure you're still giving your wife what she needs, or, I'm still even though I'm asking you guys for things, I'm still giving you what you need to do your part too. It's really just it's the communication, and it's making sure that everyone is getting what they need to do to be successful and to move forward. And so it's that way, it's reinventing yourself, Eric 3.0, what has been different about you now that wasn't before, and how you're still evolving, and how you're still communicating and connecting, and in all different ways. I just think it's so important.
The coolest thing about that I wanted to highlight, as we level up as business owners and fathers and wives and all the things that we are, if you're doing it and you're doing it right, hopefully you see the world around you starting to level up. You see the people around you start to level, your network start to level up, your friends, everything around you. And unfortunately, the ones that aren't leveling up with you, it's in the rearview mirror, right? You start to look and you go, yes, I understand, and I love you for that, and you're in the rear view, but I'm moving forward, with or without you in the car. So I just wanted to question, though, for the folks at home, Kath, and they're like, oh, I love all this, but it's difficult for them to move. It's difficult to get past the barriers that are up here in their minds. Are there any tools, or is there anything that you can suggest to them to the first step to begin reprogramming?
Yes. I would say the first thing that you want to do, and this may be the only thing you ever do because I think it'll be the catalyst for everything else, but if you take the time to write down, and it's funny, an author will never tell you put my book down and go do something else other than read my book, but I say it several times throughout the book, and it's no joke. Put the book down and take out a piece of paper and make 2 columns. One is to really identify what you value in life, what's important to you. And then make a list on the other column of the ways you're actually spending your time. And sit back and have a really hard look at that. Because most people will find that those 2 columns very rarely align very well. And when you recognize what's important to you and how you're actually spending your time in your life, it becomes very clear that something's got to shift. It also gives you an opportunity to hone in on the detail of what you value and where you may want to start putting more energy into. So it's not a hard exercise, but it is an honest exercise. And it's the first thing that you can really do to start the conversation with yourself. And if you can be really honest and do that, the rest comes from there. Creating the reinvention roadmap, figuring out who you need to surround yourself with, finding mentors, volunteering to try something on for size for a day a week, or whatever it is that you want to do. And you're going to start to pull these elements into your life.
I love that. I love that. And I wanted to highlight how powerful, for those who have made it through, thank you for the pearl and the prize, as my good friend Josh McCallum would always say. You've gotten to the end of the show, but I wanted to I'm going to be your predictor of the future right now, Kathy. Okay, I'm going to
like
be
there should be
your
music or
psychic
something.
because I foresee what you're putting together, what you're doing is going to get to the point where Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning brand, how all of that manifested itself into this massive movement of people that understood they needed to reinvent themselves, and one of the steps was, in the morning they had to start a new routine. I feel like with what you're doing, it's the same thing, Kathy, because it's so powerful and it's so relevant to the times where we have to reinvent ourselves no matter what stage of life you're in, but especially now, as I mentioned, with people that are coming out of retirement, empty nesters, there's just a huge audience for this. So I can see, man, you're going to be busy when everything opens back up, right? You're going to be on the stages, and it's going to be insane. So
Well,
this is my prediction for you.
Eric is my new psychic, everybody.
You can tell your old psychic that
you're taking over.
New one.
And go stare at a tree.
Exactly.
But I bring that up. It wasn't by design, but it happened to work out that we do have October 16th for anyone who wants to join PodMax, the next event, which is on its way. Hal Elrod is going to be here. Hopefully Kathy will be there as well. She'll be in the room enjoying, the virtual cocktails and we're in her virtual heels. She could wear heels. But
Virtual heels.
I'm so excited. I've got an event to go to.
She's
that I
got
can
an
wear
event
heels.
too. There you go. Wear your heels. You're welcome to come.
In my bedroom.
You could be in our studio with us. We're open to that. But yeah, absolutely. October 16th, Hal Elrod will be on the stage. Kathy was on our stage previously. So we have rock stars, as always, for you, the audience, the tribe, the community, who we love and adore. So thank you so much for tuning in and for watching every Wednesday at 11. Thank you, Kathy, so much for being here with us. Reinvent yourself.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Yes.
I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.